activists for the non-farmers here in California to make this thing move forward. So after you get through listening to what they have to say today, we need to really get involved, and we'll talk about ways to do that. So I hope you have a good event. Remember to turn your cell phones off. Bottled water is allowed in the theater. So any other housekeeping measures we'll just take as needed. So here's Martha.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for putting this together. It was a great privilege to be able to be on a panel with all of these distinguished panelists, salt of the earth, people who grow our food and who've been enduring, and they are so, how should I say, they're so humble and so gracious for what they've been through and what they what they continue to go through, and I'm just really grateful to them for taking the time and taking out of their taking money out of their own accounts to come down here to speak to us, because this issue isn't just about the farmers in the Central Valley. It affects all of us. And I don't think, well, obviously because of the showing, people don't understand how serious this issue is and how greatly it's impacting us and will impact us further. One of our panelists at the California GOP convention that Linda referred to, and I'm so grateful to Linda for putting this panel presentation here together. It was Dave Sterling. Dave Sterling is of counsel with Pacific Legal Foundation. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Pacific Legal Foundation. They're based out of Sacramento, and they do a lot of work in constitutional law issues. And he has, in serving Pacific Legal Foundation, they're doing some work that concerns the water issue. He presented at the water panel, and he isn't here to present today, and I wanted to, present for him, cover what he covered at the conference, because what he did was he helped set the background up for people to understand, how this isn't about a drought and how it's far more pervasive than that. Dave Sterling, before he joined Pacific Legal Foundation, he served 8 years as Chief Deputy Attorney General at the California Department of Justice. He's served in public office. He served as a judge of the Superior Court in Sacramento County. He was General Counsel of the California Ag Labor Relations Board. He was 3 times elected as a member of the State Assembly. He was one of those elected officials who didn't want to make a lifetime career out of it. He thought he could do more. He knew by then how insidious the Endangered Species Act was, how dangerous it was, how much harm it was causing and devastation. And so he went to Pacific Legal Foundation and serves there, helped to start what is their project on the Endangered Species Act. And he's written a book called Green Gone Wild, Elevating Nature Above Human Rights. It was published in May of 2008, and I recommend it. It's a great primer to help people understand the real nature of the Endangered Species Act and how insidious it is. But what he did, and I'm going to share some of his notes with you, is he gave a presentation at the Water Crises Conference that took place at the California Republican Party convention last month, and because he felt it was important that everybody be informed on the water crisis and the background information. The background information to help you better understand why we're having a water crisis. And the current water crisis is only one painful example of a larger crisis that is in the process of destroying America as we know it. That's not an exaggeration. That larger crisis is, and this may come as a surprise to most of you, maybe it won't, maybe you're already super well informed, that the extreme green movement is the most powerful political force in the country today. What we're experiencing in the Central Valley is proof. But you'll understand why later, as the gentleman explained. Nearly everything that it advocates, every program that it promotes, every lawsuit it files leads to an increase in the size of government, an increase in the costs of government, and worst of all, to an increase in government's intrusiveness into our lives, our livelihoods, and our private property rights. Okay, so then I'm going to take a minute to clear up a popular misconception, and this is important because it's something that we each grapple with in the environmental culture in which we live today, that there is a vast difference between conservationists and exclusionists. As the term environmentalist has fallen out of favor with much of the public, the conventional media has begun referring to green activists, including the large and the well-funded green organizations, as conservationists. But that is not an accurate use of the term conservationist. A conservationist is one who believes that the nation's natural resources, such as the land, water, minerals, including oil and natural gas, forests and wildlife, should be available to people's use and consumption so long as they are conserved by prudent, non-wasteful management practices. We're probably all conservationists in this room, in its real sense of the word. Conservationists take a balanced approach between preserving nature and providing for human needs. All reasonable, thoughtful people today, and that includes you and me, all of us, are conservationists. We want clean air, clean water, and a full and diverse natural world, but we also want and need jobs, places to live and work, transportation, sources of energy, agricultural products, manufacturing, technology, and the like. The extreme green movement, on the other hand, embraces the uncompromising, exclusionist views of John Muir, who zealously advocated for pristine wilderness and preached against the intrusion of people. We don't fit into the landscape. Muir believed that nature's landscape, species, and resources existed not to serve man, but independent of man, and were deserving of as much or more recognition than man. Muir did not care much for people. His primary goal was to exclude people, and if Muir had had his way, few of us would be living in the West. In 1892, he sought to perpetuate his exclusionist philosophy by founding the Sierra Club. Today's followers of John Muir's exclusionist philosophy recognize that returning to the era of pristine wilderness and sparse populations is impossible. So instead, they work tirelessly to grind down and obstruct the economic engine that drives commerce, growth, development, and progress. And as ardent anti-capitalists, they condemn any business endeavor that turns a profit, and they oppose the constitutional right of private ownership of land. Unless effectively challenged, the Green Movement will sooner or later sap the private entrepreneurial spirit that has defined America since the founding. The hardcore green organizations use as their primary weapon the heavy-handed Federal Endangered Species Act to elevate plant and wildlife species above the economic, social, and even the physical needs and endeavors of people. Their aggressive use of the Endangered Species Act has led to the loss of human lives. They've destroyed livelihoods, and in countless cases all across America, property owners are denied the use of their own land by federal agencies so that Endangered Species Act listed species can reside on their land, yet the federal government declines to pay them just compensation, as called for in the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution for converting their land